guys really missed a gem with this.
All right. Going live on Instagram.
My smoke's not giving you a secondhand contact bonus, is it, Michael?
A little bit. That's okay. I'm used to it. We've breathed nothing but smoke and dust here in Asheville the last few days, so I'm just rolling with it at this point.
All right.
Fortunately, I became one with the smoke long ago.
Bury me in smoke.
All right, guys. We are live for whatever that's worth, and we're going to be joined by three more of the speakers from. Well, we have two with us right now, but we're going to have three here, a third shortly. But we have going to have three more speakers from the Strange Realities Conference coming up in Nashville, Tennessee, and all three tonight are going to be at Strange Realities at SIR on location in Nashville. And so we have Recluse, who's here with us, and we have Micah Hanks as well, and Wren Collier should be joining us fairly shortly. So welcome, guys. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to doing the Strange Realities Conference with us here. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a little bit what you guys are going to talk about at the conference tonight. So just give everybody a nice little teaser. And if you're watching this on YouTube, there should be a link to purchase the tickets. So if you want to purchase the tickets either for online or in person, that is there for you as well. And I will flash up periodically the banner for you to go to the website and check everything out. But welcome, guys. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Adam. Good
to be here, brother. Hope you guys are doing okay over there in Music City.
We are doing just fine, man. But I've heard that you guys have been struggling out there in Asheville, man. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's been pretty real, as we say. You know, I actually went for 15 consecutive days without power, running water, internet, anything like that. Had to leave town this past weekend, and so I got my first hot shower in about 2 weeks, and got back in town, and finally we had power. Miraculously, internet was up and running at that point. But I mean, I think that for a lot of people, you learn from experiences like this. In fact, actually, prior to going live here, we were talking a little bit about this and past experiences with things like this. In Appalachia, I think we'll just say that, you know, we're no stranger to those kinds of things potentially happening. But after this experience, I have acquired generators, Starlink, and basically everything that I would need either to be able to have a mobile studio that I take somewhere and can broadcast and produce content in the absence of any kind of access to power and things along those lines. Or I can just keep my studio here present up and running. And I've actually just recently moved into this new studio. I don't live in the studio, by the way, Adam. I have a whole house, but there's the studio in the house.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Still trying to get this thing up and running. And so it's been quite a challenge. And again, that's just on the logistics side of things. The first week after Hurricane Helene hit here, you know, day one was coordinating with neighbors. By day two, there were reports of looting and theft, even out here in the country where I am. And so I was going and meeting my neighbors under very unusual circumstances. Walk over, knock on the door, say, "Hi, don't be afraid. I'm your new neighbor. By the way, I hear somebody tried to rob you yesterday." And, it was a challenging set of circumstances. By day four, the end of day four, I was the last person in the neighborhood because everybody else kind of had to leave and go to places where they had power and running water. And so I was kind of the defender of the neighborhood there for a few days, traveling up the mountain, carrying food to people who I'd never met yet again, doing wellness checks, delivering flashlights, candles, food, things along those lines. Of course, going to check on my family members, trying to provide amenities and sometimes just moral support to friends. Had a real hairy moment one day, and I don't mean Sasquatch. I mean that kind of moment where you have a friend call you and say, I haven't heard from my parents in 4 days now, and we don't know if they're alive or dead. And we had that moment where we were like, okay, well, if we have to hike 4 miles in there and find them, here's what we have to do. We're going armed because, in desperate times, desperate folk up there in the hills sometimes will do desperate things. Thank goodness his parents escaped. They got out on an ATV. They were able to get to a nearby shelter. He heard from them the next day. But I mean, you talk about having some difficult conversations with people and planning to do things you never see yourself doing. So anyway, we won't belabor the point. It's been a very exciting and educative time here for us here in Appalachia recently.
Yeah, I would say so. And so was it a combination of like the remnants of the hurricane and just caused like a whole bunch of flooding, and that was really the most of the issue, or was it like the wind as well, or
it was a combination? Groundwater. Well, first of all, unprecedented amounts of water flowing across the surface of the soil, coming down off the hills, but also undercutting trees and weakening their root structure. And then the tremendous hurricane force winds of up to more than 70 miles per hour in some instances completely toppled trees. I mean, when you undercut them and you weaken their root structure, and then you have strong winds pushing, trees were just falling right and left. Infrastructure gave out, the water systems gave out, many of the roads gave out. Right here in my community, which is in the, I guess you'd say the East Asheville area, we actually had closer to Reynolds, really, is where I am for anyone who's ever been to Asheville. But we had sinkholes, open up and swallow portions of the roads. We had mudslides that swallowed entire communities. National news outlets, ABC News affiliates were reporting on a little area called Craigtown that's minutes away from me. 11 people were killed in a mudslide that occurred up there. Chimney Rock, a lot of people have heard about it. It's incredible that places like Chimney Rock and Lake Lure have become national news subjects in the last few weeks. But Chimney Rock and Lake Lure, about 25 minutes that way from me. I mean, Chimney Rock, we were only within the first 48 hours being told Chimney Rock is gone. Swannanoa is gone. Pensacola, not Florida, Pensacola is a little community up here in the north portion of the county, and extending over into the next county. But I mean, that area was gone. Burnsville and many parts of Burnsville also just completely wiped off the map. Imagine for a moment what it's like when you have limited communication capability because all the cellular networks were down. Nobody had heard from me, being a podcaster, right? And doing like what you guys do. People got really scared when day 4, day 5 rolls around and I'm not putting out podcasts. There aren't any articles being written by me at my website, thedebrief.org. My team members around the world, based in different countries, Germany, Canada, and also here in the United States, they were getting emails saying, can somebody find out what's going on with Hanks? Is he alive down there? And yeah, it was just really different. But I mean, long story short, and back to your question, Adam, yeah, it was just that combination of tremendous amounts of rain and the winds, which really only hit that morning, Friday morning, I think September 27th. But in the aftermath, it's going to take us years to really completely crawl back out of this. So many businesses flooded, destroyed, communities. God. Yeah. I mean, it was just incredible, man. I've never seen anything like that. And again, it's now been ranked as the second most deadly inland storm since Hurricane Katrina 19 years ago.
Yeah, because you would think, being in Asheville, of course, you're on the eastern side of the mountains, but you would think that's far enough inland that like a hurricane really wouldn't affect you at all. But it was just the amount of rain. Yeah. And I guess there were other parts of North Carolina that got hit pretty hard as well. So,
and surrounding states. I mean, parts of South Carolina, parts of Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Virginia, even as far south as Florida, they certainly also had effects from both of these hurricanes. And let's not forget that after Helene, within days, we also had Milton make landfall down there in the Panhandle. So I mean, throughout the Southeast, it's been a hard time for people. But again, it was, no pun intended, the perfect storm when the after effects, like you said, Adam, it was the after effects of the Hurricane Helene that made their way to Asheville. It wasn't even the hurricane itself, but by the time all that rainfall and wind made its way up here, it devastated a community that you've been to. You've been here before, and
I have
many times.
a few times.
Yeah, and it's a place that many people thought was a sanctuary in the sense that, oh, that kind of climate devastation will never happen there. Let me tell you, it happened here. And of course, I've had people on social media coming after me and saying I'm part of the conspiracy, part of the effort to cover up the controlled demolition of dams, the acquisition.
The Holocaust of the Trump supporters in those counties, so that the election can be swayed for Kamala Harris there.
I mean, there's so many conspiracies right now, Recluse. I can't even keep up with all of them. I'm somebody who knows that, as I think everyone here present does, that there's a time and a place for discussion about legitimate conspiracies. Such things. Anybody who knows history, and who studies things, issues like I do, that include government secrecy, issues involving, government transparency, things related to what the DoD now calls unidentified anomalous phenomena, the long history of disinformation involved with that as well. Anybody who follows these subjects knows, and I see Wren's joining us here now, so welcome, Wren. But anybody who follows this kind of subject matter knows that you have to have a certain level of discernment, and you can't always just accept at face value a standard, here is what's happening kind of narrative. But in this case, living in Asheville, I see some of the stuff that people have been posting online, knowing that I'm sitting across the street from the center that is allegedly part of the plot, or whatever. There was a lot of that kind of stuff going on, and it was a real eye-opener for me about the way that misinformation spreads, but not surprising to me, again, because with my own interest in the history of misinformation and disinformation in the UFO phenomenon, I mean, that is something that we're probably more well aware of than many historians, right?
One of those was, I think it was in Asheville. Didn't somebody attack or try to, or call in threats against somebody from FEMA?
What had happened was, in some of the communities, there were people who were getting on social media sites like TikTok, and they were streaming, and they were saying that there were active efforts by the United States federal government through the auspices of organizations like FEMA to come in here and to essentially seize land, right? Now, historically, and this is an interesting kind of tie-in with some of the things we'll be talking about at, Strange Realities, there have been people who own land close to, sites like Area 51 out there, the Groom Lake facility in Nevada. And what happens when American citizens own that land generally, not always, but I mean generally, the government comes in and they try to buy that land. Now, there can be some instances, like, for instance, when roads are being built and there's infrastructure and things like that, where people basically can be told, hey, listen, you know what, we're building a highway through this area and you're going to have to move. Sorry. But they don't just come in there and seize the land and not offer those residents something, right? So the claims, of course, had been that the government was using the devastation of this natural disaster as a impetus for just coming in and seizing land without having to pay anything for it, which is, of course, nonsense. Nobody's land was taken. The lithium mines that people claim are in this region, I think the nearest one is actually down close to Kings Mountain. It's nowhere near Lake Lure, let alone Chimney Rock or Asheville. So these are some of the kinds of things people have been saying. Now, what's also true, though, I'll point out, and many locals took issue with this, FEMA officials, they were a little slow on their response. And then once they got here, they didn't know where to go and really what to do. And they were trying to coordinate best they could and set up these command centers where they could tell people, come here, we'll give you supplies, we'll write you a check for relief. But they weren't getting out there and actually doing the kind of response that the locals did. And there were some local radio hosts, in fact, who kind of grilled the area FEMA officials about that and said, look, how come it takes you guys this long to get out here and even get anything done? By the time you got here, many of the locals had already cleared the roads. lives were being saved by people who were not professionals in the search and rescue area or in other areas. So that was kind of part of the issue. I think that those kinds of real issues ended up being conflated a bit. And again, it just, turned out to be a very ugly situation. So long story short, down there in Rutherford County, there was a man who was arrested and released on, I think, a $10,000 bond after saying he was there and prepared to defend himself and his community against FEMA officials and had made some threats against them. National news.
Wow. Yeah, Micah, I'm glad. I am. First of all, I'm glad that you're okay, and I'm glad the people around you are okay, and that Asheville can recover from all this, and that also you're going to be able to get here to Nashville as well. So, because there's road closures and there's still problems and issues with that. Like you said, the sections of I-40 are just in the river, so like washed away. And I've been on that section before. I mean, it's a wavy, windy ass road anyway, so I can only imagine the headache that causes.
Yeah, that was one of the first real images from outside the area that I was shown. One of my neighbors had been sent that, and the portion of I-40 just completely caved in, washed out. Now in the French Broad River, I presume, and it's going to make it a little tricky traveling west out of Asheville for a while. There for a few days, all but I think 3 of the interstates were closed. But the Asheville Regional Airport was closed there for a while too. They didn't have power. They didn't have anything. They didn't have water. Yeah. It's open now. I actually flew out of Asheville Regional Airport this weekend, and so if all else fails, I'll fly to Nashville. It's a quick, easy flight, but that'll carry me over some of the devastation and get me over to where you guys are.
For sure. Okay. So I'm curious. The purpose of this tonight is to talk about what you guys are going to be presenting, hype it up. And Mike, I am very curious about what you're going to talk about at the conference, because as we let everybody choose their own topics. So curious about what you're going to talk about.
Well, I mean, we could get into that now, but I mean, I've been running my mouth about the hurricane devastation. Maybe one of our other guests would like to jump in for a moment, and I could round things out a little later. I don't know.
Yeah, we could do that. That's fine. I'll pivot over to Stephen then.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Well, let's see. I actually feel really guilty. Frankly, I've spent most of the last week touring the Midwest with a bunch of beautiful women, cooking them dinner and so forth. So I'm actually having the time of my life, really. But anyway, in the midst of doing this, I actually did manage to do something for my Strange Realities presentation. I made it out to the Fabian Villa outside of Geneva, Illinois. This is just a wonderful place on so many levels. It was created by a man named George Fabian. He set up an institution there known as the Riverbank Laboratory. And there was a lot of interesting stuff going on there. My favorite thing was the posture experiments. So he had this facility on the grounds that he had. And I should point out that this was a walled off compound. It was rather large. He had his own militia, the Fox River Militia, that were routinely drilled there. They were testing a bunch of artillery shells and so forth in the lead up to World War I, munitions, all this other good stuff. And they had this center for juvenile delinquents on the grounds. And it was specifically juvenile delinquents who were all females. You had all of these teenage girls there. And Fabian had come up with a novel ideal to rid them of their debauchery: posture experiments. So he brought these girls out and would have them stripped naked, and he would observe their posture and offer constructive criticism as a means of curing them of their mental illness or whatever. So anyway, this was one of the common staples of this place. They also did a lot of cryptography and things like that. In fact, I'm told that the National Security Agency grew out of this place. But the great thing about this is when people came to this facility and asked Mr. Fabian what it was all about, when they saw these teenage girls and this militia, these munitions being blown up and everything, just told them, lads, it's all about Shakespeare. It's all about Shakespeare. And that is what my presentation is about, guys. It's about Shakespeare.
Color me intrigued.
That's perfect. Did you say you saw? Yeah, you saw something in Washington D.C. You were telling me that when we.
I haven't even gone to that yet. But yeah, there's a really weird building in Washington D.C. I'm obsessed with. It has a statue of Puck in the front. It says, "Lord, what fools these mortals be." It's very appropriate for my presentation.
Okay. So are you going to talk about like Shakespeare, like Shakespeare mysteries?
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I mean, you want people to come and hear this freaking thing, right?
Yeah, I do.
Give it all away right now.
Say naked teenage girls being frauded for proto MK Ultra experiments. What more do you want, Adam? For God's sake.
Well, it's definitely that's definitely some sensationalism. So,
is this the same guy?
What do you got, Wren?
Steven, was this the same guy who was taking like the Yale posture photos where they were?
No, that was Sheldon. This actually came before Sheldon. This was back in the World War I era. I'm guessing that Sheldon was very influenced by Fabian stuff, though, because yes, a lot of these institutions were really obsessed with the notion that posture was a great insight into your mental stability for many years, and it gave them fantastic excuses to get people to strip naked and take photographs of them.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of that, like, I don't know how much you know about the history of like physical culture and like bodybuilding culture, but a lot of that stuff really originates around the turn of the century too, and in that sort of environment. I'm trying to remember the name of the one guy, but he's guy who he was like the first fit influencer, right? He was like this guy who wrote all of this stuff about how, you know, the physical form being like strong and disease free, it directly correlated with like virtue in the person, right? So the more, you know, physically beautiful you were, the more morally virtuous you were as well, right? So, and it like heavily influenced a lot of like fascist ideology later on, but I don't know. It's like I think that may have like a through line to some of this posture stuff. Like
I know there was like the notion now of like the 3 separate body types, I guess.
Which is totally BS too. That's the funniest thing about it. People still use those terms like ectomorph.
No, from what I understand, it picked up big in sports medicine, if I'm not mistaken. You might know more about that than I do.
But there are people who should know better who still use those terms today, and those terms are complete nonsense. Like they don't exist. Nobody is an ectomorph. Nobody is a mesomorph.
Ectomorph. There you go.
It's made up. Like it's literally just made up. But yeah.
I mean, one of the guys who assisted in this was Walter Breen. I mean, this was the guy
it's like
sexually abused his own freaking daughter and a bunch of other kids.
It's a real rogues gallery when you start getting into this stuff.
Posture and Shakespeare. That's the gist of my presentation.
Well,
and cryptography.
I think I'm gonna look forward to it. And I got you speaking on Friday night. 7:30 to 8:30. So perfect prime time. So Tim, you get to go on before Tim Banal. So congratulations.
I'll try to make it a good one, man.
Good. You always do. So, well, Wren, you and I haven't even talked about what you're even thinking about doing. So, like, I'm curious about what you're going to do.
So, I'm going to be doing a bit of a workshop. Over the past, really 2 years, I've been really getting into astrological magic, in particular, Arabic astrological magic. And so a lot of the stuff I've been doing over the past 2 years relates around the lunar mansions. So these are the 28 sort of sections of the sky that the moon goes throughout its 28-day course. So each one of those mansions in Arabic astrology corresponds with a different constellation, and each has its own sort of magical powers. Some for evil, some are for destroying crops, breaking up relationships, destroying buildings, and then some are for good stuff like freeing captives or increasing harvests or bringing prosperity. And what I really like about it in terms of astrological magic is that the moon's relatively fast. Every 28 days it cycles through all of these mansions, and so every 28 days you have a good chance of getting a decent enough election to create one of these planetary talismans or one of these lunar talismans. This is in contrast to planetary talisman magic, where it may be if you're wanting to make a Jupiter or a Saturn talisman, right? Those planets are very, very slow. If you miss your opportunity to make, say, a Saturn talisman, you may not get another opportunity to do so for 27 years. So your chances of actually getting stuff done are very few and far between if you're using some of the slower planets. And in general, it's going to be a little bit of an introduction to the concept of astrological magic for people. So I'm going to, kind of give people a short, quick, like, how do you read an astrological chart? What is an astrological chart? Like, understanding that it's not just this abstract thing. Like, it's literally a map of the sky from a given vantage point at a given time, right? So, if you're looking at an astrological chart and you see that, Venus and Jupiter are conjunct, right? They're right next to each other. You can literally look up in the sky and see Venus and Jupiter right next to each other. Like, it's not like, I don't know, people think the chart is like this abstract thing when in reality it's a map. And kind of going over the different terms, like how to choose an election, right? An election is a specific point in time where a planet, in this case the moon, is fortunate, right? Like it's not harshly aspected by one of the malefics, which are Mars and Saturn, or it has ideally good aspects like a trine or a sextile to one of the benefic planets, Jupiter or Venus. There's all these, like, it's like a checklist you can go down, like all these little conditions should be as right as possible, and then at that moment you create the talisman, and that can even be as simple as just drawing the image that the book describes on a piece of paper, right, and keeping that piece of paper. I make mine out of like metal using acid etching and a bunch of different like tools and stuff, but it's a thing that anyone can do. It doesn't require a whole lot of training, a whole lot of like equipment and setup. Like I said, you could just draw it on a piece of paper if you really wanted to. And I just think it'd be a good thing to introduce to folks, because I found that type of magic to be very, very effective. Like, once I started incorporating the astrological stuff into my magic, I started getting results that were better than I'd ever seen in my life. So yeah, that's going to be it. I'm going to be talking about the lunar mansions, kind of giving some people some practical instruction on how to use them, how to do that kind of magic for yourself, and hopefully they'll get out there and do it.
Okay, excellent. Yeah,
Fitting preview of upcoming full moon,
apparently.
Yeah, the moon's really gorgeous tonight. I don't know if anyone is taking a look, but it's beautiful.
It is. It's like a.
Yeah, we're about to go out and check it out ourselves. Yeah.
I saw it a minute ago. It's crazy.
So you're going to be doing a workshop, and so we've got you 3:30 to 4:30 on Saturday.
Okay, sounds great.
And that's right before we're going to break for dinner. So, I mean, I will probably talk more about the schedule in the next episode that we do, but Surfiel is also doing a workshop where he's doing like this conspiracy conjuration kind of like card game, where he's got like these different like conspiracies listed on this card, and there might be some appearances by some strange reality speakers in amongst these as well. So be on the lookout for that. But you just kind of like make your own conspiracy, and like how, it's almost like it's own kind of like conjuration, but using conspiracies, using conspiracy cards as more like a tarot card kind of thing. So I think that's
sounds interesting.
So there's a question here. What's the lunar mansion for now, Wren?
Right now, I have to look and see where the moon is. What's funny?
Almanac.
Yeah, I've got to look at my astrological chart and see. It's funny too, because like the Arab, if you look at an Arabic calendar, the days of the month are based on the lunar mansions. That's how like the Arabic world keeps track of time. I think like secular stuff just uses the Gregorian calendar, but all the religious calendars use the lunar mansions for the days.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, Wren. I think that's going to be great. And of course, you help us out also with tech stuff as well. So you're always doing some kind of double duty. I'm also going to speak this year too. So
let's see
as well.
I think it's like
Wren is
first or second mention. Let me see.
Well, while Wren's kind of figuring that out, Micah, I'll kind of move over to you, and we'll talk about what you're going to present. And actually, you and Josh are kind of the double headliners on Saturday night. So
Yeah, Josh is another one of those wonderful guys. Yeah, I'm currently narrating his audiobook for him. But unfortunately, with the storm and everything else that's been going on, we had to kind of pause that project. So I'm eager to get back into the adventures of the characters in his novel. This is, of course, Them Old Ways Never Die.
excellent book. I've read it last year.
Rick Coulter, of course, I think our anti-hero protagonist. But there's another character in the book that despite Rick Coulter being a professional musician who's honky-tonking on the weekends, and I can certainly relate to that, there's actually another character that Josh says he had me in mind when he created this character, and that character, I believe his name is Devlin, but
yeah.
Okay. Josh said that he considers Devlin sort of like my dark alter ego, maybe. So, and funny enough, I mean, when you're an audiobook narrator, you assign different voices to all these characters, and Devlin is not my voice, but I guess the voice that when this finally is complete and the audiobook is available and you finally hear the voice I have assigned as a voice actor to that character, maybe then you'll get a glimpse at what my paranormal alter ego is like. All that said, Josh and I have been friends for a long time and somewhat linked, I guess, synchronistically, or maybe I should say synchromistically at the hip for various reasons. And so haven't seen him in a couple of years, and it's going to be really good to actually share some space with him and all of you. What I'll be talking about, of course, is the United States federal government's sudden renaissance of interest with regard to the unidentified anomalous phenomena, artists historically and formerly known as UFOs, and in some circles still known as UFOs. But, the problem with this subject is, and this is really coming back to what we discussed early on in this conversation with regard to the problems we have faced here in the Asheville region recently, there's a long history of misinformation and disinformation. Two different things, by the way. You could be wrong, but believe it, and you tell people things you believe that are wrong, and you are a spreader of misinformation. I think that in the operative sense of things, disinformation is when somebody knows that they are spreading bullshit and they are actively going out there and presenting bad information with the purpose of trying to drive a certain narrative, or perhaps also to drive people away from a certain narrative or certain conclusions. The study of UFOs has long been riddled with that. People, actors from within government or otherwise, who have certain narratives that they want to try and present, which lead the public's general attitudes and ideas toward the study of UFOs. And again, whether there's some sort of malevolent intent or, by contrast, some very pure and good intent on a part of people in the government who think that, the people can't handle the truth. We know what's happening, and it's so terrible that they can't handle it. So for their own good, we've got to try and protect them by steering the narrative and injecting falsehoods into the story. Whatever the modus operandi is, whatever the motives and intent are for the misrepresentation of what I do think is effectively a UAP reality, whatever that reality may be and wherever it may hail from, whether it's an earthly phenomenon and it's something that's completely clandestine but nothing out of this world, or if it's something that's not out of this world but is something that has been kept somehow very secretive, more along the lines of what the late Mac Tawney's kind of described, and the term he gave that was cryptoterrestrial, which is sort of a variant of other terms we've heard over the years going back many decades. John Keel had used the term ultra-terrestrial. A lot of people just look at that and they say, well, people like John Keel and from the Keelian or from the Vallean account, camps, Jacques Vallée seems to prescribe to some sort of interdimensional hypothesis. That's what those guys believe. I think that those interpretations, as far out as they sound, those interpretations of the ufological reality are far more nuanced than just, oh, well, it's something from another dimension. Oh, well, they're time travelers. One of the definitions that Keel gave us for ultra-terrestrial had actually been essentially something from right here that is apart from our current understanding of and history of, and maybe even our understanding of the evolution of life forms on this planet, but something that is from right here. In other words, Keel, based on what point in his career he was describing this, because at other points he did seem to pretty strongly insinuate a sort of interdimensional concept there. But at various times in his career, his attitudes toward these subjects changed. And on any given day, you might have gotten the Keel that was saying, yeah, it is sort of like what Valet says, or the Keel who was saying it was effectively something more like a crypto-terrestrial kind of, almost like a breakaway civilization kind of a concept. Anyway, the point is, there are so many different interpretations of what UAP might be. My point is not to try and say, well, this is what I think they are, or they are from here, or they are this. My point is to try and look at the way that our attitudes toward this subject are shaped by people who, with extreme confidence and for motives that remain somewhat mysterious, go out there and they spout bullshit. And they talk about UFOs as though they are authority figures and who have an authoritative stance on this subject. And they are widely viewed by the media as having an authoritative position on this. But let me tell you something. Long-time, serious, disciplined historical researchers, and also those who are committed to applying true science toward this subject, know better and know otherwise. And I've kind of gotten to a point where I'm not really one of these people who, like a lot of the kids, the 2017ers, I think is something that Josh Cutchin said to me on the phone the other day. He referred to 2017ers, and it didn't dawn on me exactly what Cutch was talking about there. Yeah,
that's
the
appropriate. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, the people who only became UFO experts after this was a huge story in the New York Times. And then subsequently, my publication, The Debrief, published some very startling revelations by a former intelligence officer with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. That article, I'll point out, also by those authors who had led the charge in 2017 with the New York Times story that blew open the whole notion that the government had been involved in all this stuff. Look, since 2017, having been involved with this subject for a couple of decades before that, and being no one new to the subject, I have since 2017 gotten to know most of those government officials who had been involved in. Some of them were legitimately researchers who were tasked by various different military organizations, such as under the cognizance of the Department of the Navy in 2020 with the UAP task force. I mean, I've gotten to know a lot of those people who were integral to those efforts very well. I don't think a lot of those people are disinformation agents. I do think there are some people who are out there who claim to have firsthand knowledge and who worked in government, and they actually did, but I think that they are effectively propagating what I would define as misinformation. So again, that's really what I hope to try and look at, and to offer a all-busting, white knuckle perspective on UFOs from the early years right up to the present day. That's what we're going to do. We're going to have some fun at Strange Realities, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Sounds like it. Yeah, that's great, Mike.
Yeah.
Mike, I'm really stoked to have you here. We tried to do it in 2022. But the main reason I'm really excited to have you is that you were one of the people that kind of gave me the idea to do this, that I could do it back in 2016. We talked about this, and I remember me and Rob sitting at the Waffle House talking about doing a conference here in Nashville, and so I wanted to do it in 2017, but for personal reasons I couldn't do it, but eventually I did do it. And so having you here is kind of going to be full circle. So I really appreciate you. And you've been on Conspiranormal. You were the third guest I ever had on the show. So you've been on this show so many times since then.
Well, a lot of us over the years have built, deeper connections than just, oh yeah, that person's been a guest on my show. I mean, you've had me to your house and had me stay as a guest at your house, and
yep,
we've recorded programs together. You've been to Asheville and visited with me, and again, it's very much like Josh Cutchin, who he ended up getting really involved in a lot of this, and I take no credit for that because it's his work, but he'll tell you that he had reached out to me and I said, you got some really interesting ideas. You should be a guest on my show. And I had him on the show before he'd ever written a book, But because he came on the show, and this had been what I'd hoped would happen, the ideas were so cool that he was able to put an email address out there, and people who listened to the show started getting in touch with him, and he started making connections. And hell, now I think Josh has written more books than I have.
Yeah.
Josh is I think one of our best and brightest, and truly one of our, and I would say the same of really anybody here, you guys all in your various disciplines and with what you do. Wren, your name comes up all the time. Recluse, I think that experiences like Strange Realities, they may have been built out of a couple of guys hanging out at a Waffle House and Adam riffing on an idea and saying, how could I do this? Could I do this? Will I be able to do this? But you are. And now you're how many years in? You've been doing it for a few years now, right?
This is
3?
well, this will be technically the 6th one. So we've been doing it for 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. See, there you go. See, so what you've done is, and this has had really, I think all along, it's been this, this community building thing, but in a way it's also got its own weird mythology,
It sure does.
Friendships all have their own weird mythology. Ufology has its own weird mythology. Everything has its own weird mythology. And that's something I really enjoy about all this stuff, because no matter how you approach it, if you really have a deep respect for the human connections, the mythology that is built between people and their unique interpersonal relationships is inevitable, but it's also invisible to a lot of people in the modern era. We're kind of taught not to pay attention to those kinds of things, to pay attention to what I think effectively and appropriately can be called the mystical side of things. And you can approach mysticism in the Jeffersonian sense of things. You don't have to believe in like fairies and magic, right? You don't have to be a spellcaster. You don't have to be a 9th level dungeon master to have an appreciation for the mystical, right? Go outside, drink your coffee in the morning, and accept the silence around you if you live in the country like I do, or go out at night and look at the stars. Those are very mystical experiences. Contemplate both your oneness and your singularity in the moment, but also your weird, strange, possibly borderline divine connection to the infinite while you're looking at those stars, and realize how small you are and how big all that shit is. That's mystical, right? These connections are mystical too. So it's my pleasure to be at such a mystical gathering with the likes of fellow ne'er-do-wells such as yourselves.
Thank you, Micah. That's great. And we appreciate you guys being here, and all you guys being here, being a part of this. I should say, Micah, you will be finishing us off 7:50 to 8:50 on Saturday night on the 2nd. So Josh,
I'll have a lot of coffee that day.
Before that is Nathan. So like I said, I'll get more into the schedule. Amy was asking on here about what I was going to be presenting. I think I said it in the first one that we did, but I'm going to be talking about the Fatima and the Ariel School incident. So the miracles at Fatima and the Ariel School, and how those are both influenced by the social tensions of the particular time period that they happened in, and the particular place that they happened in, and possibly getting a little bit into how, like something like Fatima was used for propaganda, but not much. But also probably we'll talk a little bit about some of the clown sightings in the early 80s and 2016, but probably touch on, really have time to do the first two. So that's what I'll be talking about, kind of like a comparison, but also a way of looking at these things kind of historically, and not just in the kind of paranormal realm, and putting them in their in their context of the time period. So that's what I'll be doing.
So I do have an answer to your question earlier, Adam. Do you want me to the audio question?
Yeah. So, I think somebody answered it on the chat here, but
okay. Yeah, we're in the second one right now. I knew it was the second or third, but I couldn't remember. But we're in 17 Aries is where the moon is right now, and between 12 and 25 Aries is the second mansion, which is Al Butane, and it is good for removal of anger, supplication and reunification, finding treasures and underground resources, destroying buildings and causing strife in relationships.
Destroying buildings.
Yeah. So it has both beneficial and malefic attributes, and I'll explain during my talk how you can.
Well, hopefully SIR doesn't collapse.
This is now. This is today.
This is right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So for November 1st and 2nd, where are we going to be? What is propitious for us here?
Let's see, November.
Amy Jones making a rare appearance, as well as the cat was making a rare appearance earlier as well.
November 2nd, 17.
It seems like oddly I always end up with cats wherever I stay at. So.
Cats are one of those species that are just ubiquitous. They've trained us. So I'm curious what is propitious for us in November 1st and 2nd.
In a couple of weeks.
All right, so that would be we'll be in the 18th mansion, I believe, because that'll be 17 Scorpio, and that is Al-Qalb, the heart, and it is good for relieving fevers and diseases of the stomach, conspiring against kings, vengeance against enemies, reinforcing buildings, freeing prisoners, and separating friends.
And the election is right after that, so that's interesting.
Yeah, conspiring against kings, right?
Yeah. Okay.
How about that?
Let's not get political. I'm so exhausted by the election. It's not even funny at this point. It's been going on for 2 years, and I'm tired of it.
Yeah.
But let's go down the list, guys. Let's talk about. Let's go ahead and please promote your stuff and all that. Stephen, we'll start with you.
You mean promote my presentation further, just in general promotion?
Oh no, general promotion.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Where can people find you, Stephen Snyder, aka Recluse?
I am the host of the Farm Podcast, which you can find on most podcast servers under the Farm Podcast Mach 2. Got a free show out that's out every Monday, and then you get 2 additional ones in the subscribers section, and you get a lot of other goodies in the all access and all that good stuff. And also, I'm the author of several books. Just had one out on Stanley Kubrick, which is pretty groovy, I think. So all that stuff is available on the Amazon under S. William Snyder. So check that out, please, as well. And hopefully I will rock it here at Strange Realities.
You will. I have confidence. And Wren?
Yeah, so I have a blog at linoleroom.com. And I'm on different social media. I've got different links on there, so you can find me. I also run the Lunar Cry Discord server. So if you want to get on there and talk with weird stuff about magic or whatever, the paranormal, get on there and talk to us. And reach out.
Okay. And Micah Hanks.
Yes, of course. I mean, you can find me online at micahhanks.com. I've got the weekly podcast, the Micah Hanks program. Follow me on, all those social media sites. Just look for Micah Hanks. I tried to idiot-proof everything a few years ago and just put everything under my name. Seems to be working pretty well so far. But there's also the debrief, and we're always covering science, technology, and occasionally UFO stuff when that happens. There at thedebrief.org. I am looking forward to being in Nashville with all of you gentlemen, whether I have to hop, skip, or jump to get there. It's going to be a good time, fellas, and a long time coming, like you were saying, Adam. Let's make some waves. Make it an event and a weekend to remember, huh?
Yeah, and it should really be emphasized. I mean, if you have the chance, you should really come out. I mean, it's great to do all of this stuff online. I mean, it's wonderful. It's great for people in rural areas to find this kind of stuff who don't grow up in places like LA or New York City or something like that. But there's no substitute for going out and doing this stuff in person. Again, if you have the opportunity to do it, you really should take advantage of it. Meet some people out there. It's a lot of fun. It's something that you will always cherish in most cases.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases, I have been known to bring different talismans and instruments and things that I make personally in my own shop to Strange Realities and give them away, and that's only possible if you're there in person. So you could win something, and I don't sell the stuff, right? They literally have no way of obtaining it except to come to Strange Realities and get lucky. So
that's right, exactly. So if you want some of that swag from Wren Collier himself, you got to come to Strange Realities conference. And
I can't promise any swag, but you can get high with me there. Probably.
Well, there you go. There you go. You could do that as well. You could get high with Recluse and get swag from Wren Collier. So there you go, guys. Well, I want to thank y'all for doing this, and also, guys, we are, depending on when you're listening or hearing this, we are either just over 2 weeks or just under 2 weeks from the Strange Realities Conference. So please come get your tickets. There are plenty of tickets available. The streaming tickets, of course, for people that are not going to be able to make it, those are $30. And if you are somewhere around the Nashville area and you want to come, there are still tickets for $70 for all 3 days. And if you don't want to just come on Friday or Saturday, there are $40 day rate tickets as well. So please come and join us. And thank you, guys. And I want to thank Recluse, Micah Hanks, and Wren Collier for hanging out with us tonight. And guys, we will be back soon on Conspiranormal, and get your tickets, strangerealitiesconference.com.